Now, one of the new features in Vue 3 is the teleport component. Now, this lets us essentially teleport some of our content that we make inside our Vue app to a different place in the DOM entirely. Now, this place can be outside of the scope of the Vue app itself. For example, it might be that in your website, you always have your modules in a div at the bottom of the HTML with a class of modules. So I could do that right here. I could say div.modules. And you might want to place all of your modules inside here, not inside the div with an ID of app, where it currently resides in some component. So we can do this with the teleport component. We can say, okay, when you render this module, I want you to take it out of the context of this app right here, and I want you to place it inside this div right here. Now, all the functionality, all the interactivity, like the methods and the data, that will all still work, but it's just that it's picking that piece of the app up and putting it inside this div right here. So let's see how to do this. So the first step in our case is to find where our module is currently being rendered, and that's in the root component app.vue. So this div right here and this div right here, these are the two things that I want to pick up and teleport to this div over here. So to do this, very simple, all we need to do is replace these divs with the teleport component. And I want to keep v-if because I still only want to show this if this statement is true, and for this as well. And all we need to do is add on the to attribute to say where we want to teleport this to. And we pass in a CSS selector to tell Vue this. So in our case, it's going to be .modules, dot because it's a class. So we'll say .modules and save this. And now if we preview over here, I'm going to refresh so we get the new HTML page. And then I'm going to inspect so we can see this in the DOM. And if I close this, we see this is the div where we want it to appear. If I alt click this button now, hopefully, yep, we see it appear inside this modules div right here. Now notice one thing, some of the styles have dropped away because this is no longer inside this div with an ID of app. And if we take a look at the styles at the bottom of this component, we're targeting the text inside that div. So we can combat this by adding on another modules selector to this, or you could place it inside your global CSS, entirely up to you. And if I come over here, we can see that now the style remains. Awesome. And all of the functionality still works, by the way. If we click away, it still closes, even though it's in this external div outside of the scope of the Vue app. So let's try the same thing with the other module. I'm going to change this and this to teleport. Then I'll say in the top one, to equal to, and then .modules, save it and preview. And now this one as well appears inside this modules div. Awesome. Now, it's not just classes this works with. We could change this to an ID if you wanted to, and in which case we just change this to a hash instead of a full stop to say we're selecting an ID now, and this all still works. The only thing is we'd have to now change our CSS selector at the bottom to be hash modules instead of dot, and save that. And it should look okay now. So then that's this chapter complete now. Hopefully you're a little more comfortable using Vue files, templates and components. And this kind of workflow is going to form the foundations of how we'll be making projects as we go further into the course. Next up, we'll use everything we've learned so far, plus another couple of new concepts to make our first project a reaction timer.